taking part in the new series. Just for a bit of context, we're working with Hydrogen Europe and the SEC, and we're looking at creating more of a gaze around hydrogen and clean energies and talking to people that are essentially on the front line combating climate change. So to kick us off, do you mind maybe taking us back to when you started with BP and how you ended up here with me today, really?
Sure, and maybe I'll start at the end, if that makes sense, and then go back to the beginning.
Perfect.
So right now I'm a director at Arup, global consultancy, kind of working across multiple sectors, but with a real focus on energy and particularly sustainable energy. And I look after our practice for hydrogen advisory across the region. And I guess the journey to here has kind of started when I started my degree. So I did a degree in process engineering back in the late 90s, and joined BP straight from university, initially working as a process engineer and then moving into more of a business commercial focused roles. And I guess if I look back of how the journey has taken me from there to here, I spent a lot of time working in gas value chains, so working in LNG, working in domestic gas value chains, so producing gas and then finding ways to get it to market. So there's a lot of similarities between certainly the early LNG market and the early gas market and what we're trying to do in hydrogen today in terms of creating new markets and doing new things. And also, was really lucky to have a very global role. So spent time working in Vietnam, spent time working in Trinidad, and then based from London, but working a lot in the Middle East and in Africa. So a lot of the regions that are also kind of important for the energy transition, both in terms of producing clean energy, but also using it. So it's been, a bit of a 20-something year career in energy that has felt like a whirlwind, but somehow destined to be where I am today.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll going back onto what you said in terms of you doing chemical process engineering as your degree. I always say this, there's a few degrees, law, chemical engineering, a few others that send you down a specific route. What was the thought process that you have, and what sort of drove you into making that decision and then ending up in energy, would you say?
I would actually say it was the opposite.
Okay.
And back when I chose my degree, one of my thoughts was, and I always say kind of, I wish I knew what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I still wish I know what I want to be when I grow up. But back when I was choosing my degree, I wanted to do something that challenged me, that I was interested in, and that did leave options open. And a degree in engineering and chemical engineering is very practical, so it's very useful and applicable to industries, but it's also a really good degree to learn how to think, to learn how to problem solve, to kind of work through logically complex problems and different solutions. So I think there's a really good grounding in terms of being an engineer, but also in terms of what I'm doing more today, which is trying to solve some of the big problems and challenges and creating solutions to develop new projects, which isn't always an engineering problem. But that thought process is really helpful.
Perfect. And then moving on to the next question, that I imagine there's been various challenges throughout the career, but if you maybe had to pick one or two key challenges that you had, maybe working in energy and moving into hydrogen, and how you've navigated those issues.
So I'll maybe it's useful to focus on kind of the hydrogen world and some of the changes that have happened over. So I guess I moved into working in hydrogen for nearly 5 years ago. And if I look back to when I initially made that move, I think one of the biggest challenges was the lack of understanding of the role that hydrogen could play in a net zero economy. And there was a real piece of certainly educating the leadership that I was working with at BP around what hydrogen was, why it was critical. I think the IEA, talking about hydrogen being part of 20% of the energy mix by 2050. And that's what we need to do to deliver net zero. And that's a huge challenge. but at that point, no one really understood it. So to be able to get strategy endorsed, to get capital for projects, to get any investment to build a team, very different to my oil and gas days where the benchmarks were available. Everybody understood what that industry was. There was a huge part of education.
Mm-hmm.
And if I move that to where we are today, and I think I'm really excited about how quickly the industry is accelerating and moving towards developing projects. But in a way, we've now gone to the alternative part of the cycle where there is so much discussion about hydrogen that people think it's real and a huge industry already today. But actually, we've still got a lot of work to do to be able to deliver what's required to get us to that point where hydrogen is playing a major part of the energy transition. And it's not easy. You know, there's lots of different parts that need to come together, whether it's the technology and the projects or the commercials or the policy and the regulation and permitting, and pulling all of those parts together is quite difficult. And I think the challenge now is actually, maybe it's again education, but it's education of, we get that you're all really excited about it, but actually to get really real about solving these problems so that we can get the steel on the ground, we can get the molecules flowing, and we can start to decarbonize those most difficult to reach sectors.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a combination of education and action all in the same process, right? Instead of educating and then actioning and then having that little gap where we need to re-educate again. So no, I completely agree, and I think it's a great point. Going into the 5-year hydrogen sort of career that you've had, what would you say the biggest achievement you had in fighting climate change, would you say? Or if there's more than one, feel free to share.
I think it's really easy to reflect on some of the projects that I've been part of originating and maturing and developing across Europe, the UK, and Australia. And, you know, we're doing some amazing things here at Arup across kind of industry and hydrogen. We always talk about the chicken and the egg, all these pieces needing to come together, and we're really working across the value chain. You know, we were part of bringing the High 24 investment into H2 Green Steel, which I think is a fabulous project and really going to change the dynamics of that. You know, the Kellis H2 Teesside project, where they're going to produce blue hydrogen in the UK, and then we're working with networks and with policy. So I think, you know, all of those projects and shaping the industry is really exciting. But if I think kind of from a very personal level, what I'm most proud of, I think what I'm most proud of is building teams, building collaboration, and developing the skills to actually deliver those projects. You know, we've started from kind of very small nuggets to actually have a lot of people working to create a hydrogen economy. And I'm quite proud that I've been part of building those teams, initially at BP and now at Arup.
Yeah, perfect. And then you mentioned a few projects then, but is there anything in specific that you're working on at the moment that's like a big decarbonisation project that you can share?
I'm trying to think what I can share.
Yeah, there might be things that you can't, which I appreciate, but anything that might be in the public domain.
I think watch my LinkedIn page, and I will try and regularly share those things that I am most proud of. But I think it really comes down to trying to solve the most difficult questions, whether that's around project development or creating the networks to move hydrogen around.
Yeah, okay. And then I'm going to take you back a little bit, sort of when you were first maybe strapping up the boots as a process engineer with BP. If you could look back, what advice and what key points would you give to a young Sally Prickett when you were on your first day with BP?
I'm going to steal some of these from advice that I've had through the years that I still think about when kind of on very much a day-to-day perspective. I think the first thing I'd tell myself is that you know what you need to do. So just go and do it and stay focused. And when people tell you that it's the wrong thing, sometimes ignore them and just carry on.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of one piece that's very much kind of from the heart. The second piece is something that someone once told me, which is that problems are good and worries are good. And I love it when I have a worry or a problem, because that's how we create new solutions, new opportunities, and actually being really open and sharing those problems, those challenges, and collaborate. And I think particularly in delivering net zero and the energy transition, collaborating across the industry to do that. So, you know, I often talk about the bruises that you get from developing projects, you know, and really learning, and how do we share that learning to enable the net zero economy is critical. But enjoy a challenge, enjoy a problem. It's actually a good thing.
Oh,
and then the third one is, and and my team will laugh if they hear this, because I always say, channel your inner Frozen, because sometimes you just have to let things go.
yeah.
And actually you can get kind of too bogged down in everything that's happening, and sometimes letting that go and really focusing on what you need to do to deliver, I think, is a really helpful piece of advice.
Definitely. I think it's great advice. And to your second point as well, if you do worry and there is problems, it means that you're doing something meaningful, right? So if you don't worry and there's no problems, then you might want to look to do something else, in my opinion. But and then lastly, as I said before before we kicked off the interview, like naturally you were a great candidate for this discussion because you'd gone through LNG and a traditional energy and then bridged the energy transition into hydrogen. So for others that might be in a position you were 5 years ago and looking to enter the sector, what advice would you have for people in that sort of transition?
I think my first thing would just be do it. Just do
Yeah.
it. We need you. We need you. And it's a really exciting industry to be in. But if I get a bit more kind of logical and helpful, for those transitioning from other sectors or other industries, I think being really crystal clear on what your skills are and what you can offer. You know, the energy transition isn't just about engineering, and it isn't just about construction and welding. We need people who can help with organizational development. We need the commercial skills. We need legal skills. You know, it really is across all disciplines to create the kind of investment that's required to move forward. So getting kind of clarity on your own skills and figuring out the role you can play, I think, is really helpful. The other thing that I always tell our new graduates or new starters is I reflect back on kind of my career and starting in the energy industry 25 years ago, and I was surrounded by people with 20, 30 years experience who had been there, they'd done it, they knew everything. And I'd come up with a great idea and they kind of go, well, actually, we tried that. And I think what's really exciting about what we're doing now is there isn't kind of a 10, 20-year track record. There's great learnings we can take from what's gone before. But I see our new graduates coming out with the most innovative ideas that are really actionable, and they don't get, you know, we tried that, because actually we need to try all these things. So I think it's a really exciting place to be in for those that kind of enjoy creating new ideas. It's really inspirational.
Yeah, definitely. And you're so right as well. We always say that in the job that we do, there is people that have been in hydrogen for 20 plus years. But for us, if you've got 5 years experience in hydrogen, that is quite a lot. Like there's not many people out there that have got sort of a lot of green hydrogen experience. No, I appreciate that. And it's great advice for anyone out there that's looking to get in the sector, because it means that they can add immediate value, I'd hope, as well. So no, it's
Yeah, and we're
definitely
trying to
great.
do something different to what's gone before, and actually we can't get to where we need to get to without doing things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on, Sally, as always, and really appreciate the insight. So yeah, all the best with closing out 2023, and good luck for the new year as well.
Thanks, George.